Hello, Serious Survivor here. And as we can see from the most recent news, that airstrikes were performed on the Iraq-Syria border, hitting Iran-backed militia and Iran-backed facilities in that general area. The U.S. carried out airstrikes against what it said were facilities used by Iran-backed militia groups near the border between Iraq and Syria, drawing condemnation from Iraq's military and calls for revenge by the militias. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby said that the militias were using the facilities to launch unmanned aerial attacks against U.S. troops in Iraq using drones. It was the second time the administration has taken military action in the region since the beginning of the year. These airstrikes were described as defensive, saying they were launched in response to the attacks by militias on U.S. bases and U.S. facilities earlier in the month and in the months of May and April. The United States took necessary, appropriate, and deliberate action designed to limit the risk of escalation, but also to send a clear and unambiguous deterrent message. The Pentagon said the facilities were used by Iran-backed militia factions, and these include the Kataib Hezbollah and the Kataib Sayyid al-Shahada. Two Iraqi military officials told the Associated Press in Baghdad that 4 militiamen were killed in the airstrikes near the border with Syria. Both spoke anonymously because they were not authorized to give these statements. They said the first strike hit a weapons storage facility inside Syrian territory where the militiamen were killed. The second strike hit the border strip. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, a British-based group that closely monitors the Syrian conflict, reported that at least 7 Iraqi militiamen were killed in the airstrikes. The Iraqi militia factions that we're talking about here are ones that are working in conjunction or being supported by the Iran government. And the militia made the statement, "We will avenge the blood of our righteous martyrs against the perpetrators of this heinous crime, and with God's help we will make the enemy taste the bitterness of revenge," they said. And that statement was made by the Popular Mobilization Forces, or the PMF, an Iraqi state-sanctioned umbrella of mostly Shiite militias, including those targeted by the U.S. strikes. They said their men were on missions to prevent infiltration by the Islamic State group and denied the presence of weapons in the warehouses. This comes shortly after the Iranian elections, and we know that the Iranian president that was elected is an extreme hardliner, and he has a very bad reputation. He was the right-hand man for the Ayatollah, and many fear the policies he will put in place will be even more severe than what we've seen in the recent past. And this is after the announcement that Iran is now enriching their uranium to rates above 60%. And to put that in perspective, Iran legally is supposed to only be able to enrich uranium to 2 to 3%. 2 to 3% is all that's necessary for commercial grade uranium in nuclear power plants. And once you get above that 2 to 3% mark, especially when you're talking about 60%, this is in the range of weapons grade uranium. So not only has Iran really upped their production of uranium, increasing the number of centrifuges they have, but they've also upped their efforts to enrich the uranium to not just 60%, but as this increases, we'll see they will reach this 80 to 90% enrichment they need for nuclear weapons, and this will probably happen before the end of this year. So after the dust settles, we wait to see what's going to happen today with this. There's going to be a lot of statements made, and the tensions between us and Iran just got even worse. So we'll have to see how this plays out. But remember, one thing in particular, Iran, China, and Russia are all allies. So we focus a lot on Russia and China that we're seeing in the news, but Iran is something that we shouldn't forget about either, because these three will work together if it were to come down to a war with the U.S. Next, on the supply chain, there's another disruption in the supply chain that's expected to continue for a little while longer, and that's with our railroad system that delivers goods across the U.S. I'm going to read some information here that came from the railways themselves. 2 major line outages have occurred in the past 24 hours, which will have a significant impact on network performance. Non-intermodal train derailment near Ames, Indiana, has disrupted both main lines on the Central Corridor between Chicago, including the Chicago Interchange, and Oakland. No ETO at this time. Flash flooding has disrupted mainline operations on the UP's River subdivision between Kansas City and Jefferson City, Missouri. This will impact traffic moving between LA and St. Louis and Chicago, including the Chicago Interchange. All traffic moving between Chicago and West Coast ports will be impacted. There are reroute options for LA traffic. However, congestion on the available lanes will impact performance. Transit to from Oakland and the PNW will be more significantly impacted as there are no viable reroutes around the Ames derailment. Residual congestion and network imbalance impacting inland and port facilities will continue into week 26. There is potential for further washout outages between Kansas City and St. Louis, with heavy flood-producing storms projected through the weekend. So this is just another gear in our supply chain that is now broken. And what we're starting to see is how easily our supply chain is affected, and the price of goods, the rate of inflation that we're witnessing is evidence of this. And from this coming from Union Pacific and other details that we've seen, then we know that this is not getting any better. It's only going to get worse. And this just shows the need that we need to be ready now. Just thought I'd put that out there today. Make sure to keep an eye on the channel. We got a lot more coming out. We're going to be keeping up with all these events and posting everybody with as much news as I can get on it. Thanks a lot for watching. God bless. And for now, Seer Survivor, out.